On January 1st, Jair Bolsonaro will be sworn in as president of Brazil. The firebrand far-right leader tapped into a well of resentment in a country devastated by rising crime and 2 years of political and economic turmoil. His win bringing Brazil's most radical political change in 30 years.
Serei o presidente dos 210 milhões de brasileiros.
Welcome to this special Inside the Americas in Brazil. For his supporters, Jair Bolsonaro is the only Brazilian capable of saving the country from its political, social, and economic crises. For his critics, the former military man is a racist, sexist, homophobic champion for dictatorship. The self-styled political outsider takes office on New Year's Day, and he has already divided the nation in two. Our team in Rio de Janeiro reports.
The election of Jair Bolsonaro caused conflict inside many Brazilian families. 26-year-old Gabriel Cassar is angry with his uncles and grandparents. It started with a social media post in which the leftist journalist gave reasons not to vote for the far-right candidate.
Here is the post that caused the disagreement. I said, "No, uncle, it's a lie. You should check your information."
Gabriel comes from a middle-class military family, and his grandmother was so angry she stopped paying for his health insurance. He did not expect that kind of revenge.
I cannot remember any time in a previous election when there was such great hatred. This time, it was not only, "I do not agree with you," but "I cannot stand your existence." This time, it's not an opposition of classes, but of values.
In 30 years of democratic elections, Brazilian society has never been so polarized. A short presidential campaign of unprecedented verbal and physical violence heightened tensions between friends and colleagues. After the president's inauguration, this group of restaurant workers is planning a pro versus anti-Bolsonaro football match. Recent corruption accusations against Bolsonaro, who promised clean politics, have changed the tone of discussions.
He earns 8,000 euros a month, has more than 25 million in his account. How does he justify it?
Who?
Bolsonaro.
But what are you saying? It's not him.
In the campaign, Bolsonaro benefited from social division. Public debate was fueled by political ads and fake news, and these friends even stopped talking to each other.
We played a lot during the campaign. It's like football. We're fighting on the pitch, but once it's over, we're all friends, and we're going to have a barbecue.
Several companies even banned political messages on clothing and in chat groups. Still, Bolsonaro's controversial policy plans will likely make tensions flare again.
Well, to get a bit more analysis now, I'm joined on the set by Alfredo Valladao. Welcome, Alfredo. You are a professor at the prestigious Sciences Po University here in Paris. We just saw there in that report these families in Brazil being torn apart. Give us the background on these divisions. Where do they come from?
Look, first of all, I think Brazil gave a show of democracy. I can't remember any time where the whole population participated in all the debates with such passion, anger, divisiveness. And then they all went to vote. The outcome was gave 3 hours later, and nobody contested the election. So this is really interesting. The other thing is that Brazil was divided a long time ago. This election, we talk about the presidential election, but we have the legislative election too. And the thing was, everybody rejected massively all the political establishment, all the leaders of the political establishment lost their seats. And the new Congress we have, 50% of our new members. So people didn't vote for Bolsonaro or for the opposition. They voted against because some people were afraid of Bolsonaro, the others were afraid of the return to power of the Workers' Party, of Lula. So in the end, besides two very extremist groups on both sides, most people voted just because they just wanted to throw the bombs out.
The movement for Bolsonaro was a populist movement, similar to what we saw in the United States with Donald Trump. Do you agree that there is a Trump-Bolsonaro parallel?
Not really, because Bolsonaro didn't have a program, didn't have anything. He just said some strange things, very reactionary. But I don't think people voted for that. People voted against everything that was there. Bolsonaro was a modest representative that nobody knew about it. So he was not tainted by corruption scandals and things like that. So, and people were absolutely fed up with the fact that Brazil was in the worst economic crisis of its history, that we had one of the worst corruption scandals in its history, and worst of all, the violence in Brazil, the urban violence. In the last 10 years, 550,000 Brazilians were murdered. That's nearly 2 times Syria. So people cannot live with that anymore. So any guy who says, well, I'll solve the problem, people voted for them. But there is no extreme right party in Brazil, for example, as in other countries. There's no program, it's just a single man.
One thing I was asking earlier about Donald Trump, I do find there is one thing that Bolsonaro and Donald Trump do have in common. That is a raft of offensive remarks. Brazil's president-elect publicly said things like he'd rather see his son die than be gay, or that women don't deserve the same pay as men. And that's not all.
My sons would never fall in love with a black woman. They were well educated. You called me a rapist, but I'm telling you now, I wouldn't rape you because you're not worthy of it. If a civilian or soldier is attacked and he fires 20 times at his assailant, he should be decorated and not be judged.
Alfredo Valladao still with me here on set. Comments like the ones we just heard have gotten people very worried. Some 40 couples, gay couples, got married one weekend this month over fears that Bolsonaro might restrict same-sex marriage. How concerned should Brazilians be about the future of human rights under Bolsonaro?
They should be concerned, but at the same time, we have to say that a Brazilian president is not all-powerful. Anything he wants to do, he has to pass through Congress, through the justice institutions, through a very strong civil society, through social media. So already this evangelical woman who was put in charge of family, because of that, she already said, no, gay marriage is a right. We cannot go down on that. So they're backtracking and all these this kind of thing. So yes, the problem is not the government. The problem is when he says these kinds of things, maybe a simple citizen will say, well, it's good to liberate this kind of horrible things. But I think it's very, very complicated to go back on the rights. And when we talk about women's rights, for example, abortion. In Brazil, abortion is prohibited until now. And the Workers' Party that stayed in power for 14 years didn't end nothing about that. So, in fact, we are in a strange situation where I don't think the rights will come back. But maybe this liberation will make things more heavy in society.
Alfredo, you mentioned one of the members of the new cabinet under President Bolsonaro. Of course, with that new president will come this brand new cabinet. And the new president-elect has chosen a very eclectic mix, economically very neoliberal, but morally conservative, a strong ex-military presence. Take a look.
Keeping his promise to downsize the presidential cabinet, Jair Bolsonaro has appointed 22 ministers, 7 less than the previous government. As Chief of Staff, Onyx Lorenzoni, the former federal congressman, was tapped to coordinate Bolsonaro's transition team. To revive a stalled economy, the president-elect has picked as chief economic advisor Paulo Guedes. A proponent of free market capitalism, the University of Chicago alum will be the new finance minister. He's betting on a vast privatization plan. A key campaign promise of Bolsonaro's to end government corruption. To do that, he's named Judge Sergio Moro to head up his justice superministry. The celebrated anti-graft judge led the car wash investigation that led to former President Lula's imprisonment. The ultra-right leader has made no secret of his fondness for the former military dictatorship that ruled Brazil. So it's no surprise that Bolsonaro has appointed 7 former members of the military. Among them, 3 generals have been given key portfolios, including defense and the cabinet which coordinates the country's intelligence services. Lawyer Ricardo Salles will head up the Environment Ministry, a blow for green activists who say he's too closely aligned with the agribusiness lobby. And the ultra-conservatives have not been left out. Evangelical pastor and anti-abortion advocate Damaris Alves will lead the newly created Women, Family, and Human Rights Ministry. Alves is only the second woman in an otherwise predominantly white male cabinet.
As we just saw there, in that cabinet, the Bolsonaro presidency is the most radical shift in Brazilian politics since democracy was restored 30 years ago, a democracy that was run for a very long time by the Workers' Party and the former president Lula. What future now for the left in Brazil?
The left has to reinvent itself because Lula has a big responsibility on this election because he tried to kill all the left and democratic alternatives to his own candidacy. And even his own candidate in the Workers' Party were given the candidacy only 1 month before the election because Lula were trying to become a candidate.
While he was in jail.
Yes. And the majority of people rejected not only the whole establishment, but more so the Workers' Party of Lula, because they deem it responsible for the mess in what Brazilian is. So it's going to be a long road to put that together. And even the other left parties or democratic parties are trying to organize themselves without the Labour Party, the Workers' Party of Lula. So now we are in a situation where people don't trust anymore their political class. So how Bolsonaro has a 6 months honeymoon in order to try to find some solutions to the big problems, economy, violence, corruption. If he doesn't get there, the worst thing we can have is a stagnation where nothing changes, in fact.
Thank you so much, Alfredo Valladao, for coming in to speak to us here on France 24. And
Thank you.
Inside the Americas, that wraps it up for this show. Do stay with us here on France 24.
Because a new page of history gets written every day. Because breaking news can't wait. Information everywhere. In all situations. On every subject. Understanding the world. Imagining the world. France 24. A different take on the news.